All right, time for another draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com, also video presentation. So part two, okay, of what are called Wonderum perspectives. Yeah, the great courses. So I do remember a bunch of YouTube advertisements for the great courses and all that crap, and it just turns out it's got an agenda. It's not really about science. It's about all kinds of wooey mind over matter mush and UFOs and Sasquatchy crap, and it's just a bunch of wooey shit, frankly. And all these credible scientists, you know, Dr. Don Lincoln of Fermilab, Sean Carroll, I think the Grassy Tyson, lots of other people have played along, and to their discredit, frankly, because this is garbage science. There's no way Dr. Lincoln didn't have some rights to say, hey, you can't put that in the video, this other part. So I'm going to play his voice here, and then this whole next segment is absolute crap. And the fact is, he allowed that to be part of a video he produced. He was part of producing. And so it just shows they don't care about the truth or the facts or science. This isn't science. This is just propaganda. That's all it is. All right. So, with that premise, let us prove the case that, they just couldn't give a shit about actual physics, the science of understanding and all of that. It's just a wooey religion.
Experiment.
I wonder which way electrons behave. So let's rerun our experiment with the electrons, and let's add a way to keep track of exactly which of the vertical holes in the wall each electron goes through.
So this is just a completely made up experiment, never actually conducted ever. So it's just some sort of thought experiment, and it comes out their way because they invented it and they never did it. And it's just made up shit. And this is the foundations of quantum mechanics. It's just to make up a fake narrative of bullshit that never took place. Again, like never proving the existence of anything called the kinetic energy. Like actually showing kinetic energy actually doing physical work somewhere. It's just complete nonsense.
If they're really acting like particles, then we ought to see that as each electron passes through one and only one of those gaps.
So this is kind of imbecilic, right? You're saying that first off, why would you send electrons through a slit? Because they're charged. And obviously they're going to be affected by how close they are to one side or to the other side of the slit, because there's always charges, right? I mean, you can't avoid there being charge differentials. So you would expect the electrons to be deflected in all kinds of ways because they're charged, for fuck's sake. I mean, it's so ignorant, so stupid. Of course they're going to move.
If they're acting like waves when they get to the wall, well, let's just see what happens.
So we'll see what happens in the fake experiment never conducted. I mean, it's just hilarious. This is science. This is they're selling this as some kind of great science course. It's such absolute crap.
First, we need some way to keep track of which vertical gap each electron is passing through. One way to do this is to put a light source near each slit.
So there's just no evidence you can actually do this, that you can sit there and put a light source and watch electrons go by. It'd be really great if you could. If it was that simple, then we wouldn't have to do all these convoluted weird things to be able to see electrons. We usually have to put a gas in so we can see them, or we have to hit a photoactive screen of some kind. That collects the extra electrons. They can't just bounce off of it. There's no theory here that you can do this.
That way, if an electron passes through, say, the gap on the left, then that electron ought to scatter some of the light over there, and we'll see.
So again, and the very idea that they're saying an electron scatters light. Did they have any evidence electrons can scatter? A single electron can scatter light? No. Do we have any evidence that it even breaks light? Well, we can't even be sure of that. But I mean, it just, if you think about it, enough electrons will. But there's no rationale here for saying that a photon with a polarization that's 1,000 atoms in size is going to completely interact with an electron. It can only partially interact with an electron at best.
See a flash near the gap on the left. We'll also need to...
So they're presuming you can create a whole new photon, a photon with gigantic polarization, by the way, thousands of atoms, 500 to 1,000 atoms of polarization. We can create that from one single electron. Zero evidence that this is true. Just zero. There's not a single piece of experimental evidence indicating you could ever see the shadow of an electron. It is just absolute nonsense.
Leave some sort of triggered camera next to each gap, something that will record a flash if it happens. So now we've updated our measurement taking devices.
So this never happened again. It never happened, all right? It's just a lie. A fake story to defend the foundations of quantum mechanics. A completely made-up experiment. And you assholes are arguing with me like I'm the pseudoscience, I'm the anti-science person. When here, right in front of your face, they're sitting there just overtly lying about the foundations of this wacky, silly nonsense theory.
Now, when we send electrons toward the wall with the two slits in it, if an electron passes...
I mean, a flat earther couldn't get away with this. Why can they get away with this? A flat earther couldn't get away with making up a fake experiment that's never been conducted as an argument defending their theory. They couldn't get away with it. And yet you're letting science get away with it. That's your duplicity, your hypocrisy. You're not just hypocrites, you're duplicitous hypocrites.
Through one gap or the other, our light sources with triggered cameras will capture the event, and they'll tell us which gap the electron passes through. And if the electron continues on its path, it'll then hit the back wall. And
so it'll make photons, and then that will not in any way disturb it. But again, who shoots electrons through slits with the expectation they're not going to be disturbed by going through the slits? Who could think that's possible?
Mark our strike paper. In this way, we should be able to keep track of everything we're interested in all at the same time. So now imagine...
So you just wondering, what's the agenda of the people who wrote this crap? Who wrote this crap script, with this crap argument? Defending a crap theory.
With this more
For what purpose? But to imply, magic.
Sophisticated setup, sending electrons
Just a religion.
Toward the wall that has two slits in it. As we do so, we'll see flashes of light, and we'll hear the camera click as each electron passes through one hole in the wall or the other. That's
okay, never happened, can't happen, bullshit, complete bullshit.
Seems very reasonable. Well, let's continue sending electrons in that direction.
I mean, obviously they would be showing us the experiment if there was a real experiment. It's obviously not a real experiment.
Until we think we have enough statistics to go ahead and check what's going on at the back wall. So, what do we find? Well, this is strange. After we sent through electrons, we check to see on the back wall and see that everything has changed. We've lost...
Oh, so everything changed. They didn't show us this first pattern that we were supposed to get. So we never got to see that with the electrons. So she's picking up where Dr. Lincoln left off, and he was using photons. So, and she's talking about electrons. So again, there's no consistency here.
The interference pattern on the back wall. Now the pattern on the back wall looks just as though we had sent tennis balls through it. The frustrating...
So let's understand that this experiment, even with electrons, you're talking about slits that are so infinitesimally small in terms of how far apart they are. And they're going to send these lines at almost the same exact location on the back wall. You're not going to see any difference on the back wall. There's not going to be any... You're going to have to use a microscope to see that they're not in perfect alignment. They're so close together.
The thing here is that the very act of measuring and keeping track of which opening each electron went through destroyed the interference effect.
Yeah, so bullshit. So never done. It's just bullshit. They just made this whole theory up that somehow if you measure something, you break the pattern. No physical experiment demonstrating that to be true. Just bullshit.
And it turns out that there's just no way around this. You might think, oh, we just need to turn down the intensity of the light source. Maybe we used light that was too bright and it disturbed the electrons too much. What you'll find as you turn the intensity...
All this you'll find if you don't do the experiment, you're sure to find it. It's just amazing. So an experiment you've never done, and they're telling us what we're going to find.
Of the light down is that at some point there won't be enough intensity left to see the electrons anymore, and then just about the time when the light is no longer bright enough to tell you which electron went through which opening, you'll recover the interference pattern.
Isn't that convenient? So the experiment they didn't do, they predict that it's exactly at that line, and you'll never be able to escape these margins that are precisely at the point where the experiment fails because of an insufficiency, a number of electrons. It just happens that it all fits perfectly. Yes, because it's a non-existent, made-up experiment.
Pattern. Or you might think about changing the color of the light instead of the intensity. Now, since longer wavelength light carries less energy, maybe...
So it doesn't carry less energy, so that's not true either, okay? Same energy, just the energy will be imposed on a surface or on contact in a shorter period of time. So if you apply energy quickly, it is more likely to do damage to a surface than if you apply it slowly. If I throw a baseball at a house, and then a year later I throw a baseball at a house, and a year later I throw a baseball at a house, it's not going to do much. But if I threw all three of them in sequence and hit the house almost the same exact time, then it might put a dent in the aluminum siding.
It will disturb the electrons less. So let's try that. What if we try changing the wavelength of the light used to measure which electron goes through which opening?
So the fake experiment with new fake parameters, so they don't do it one way, and then they talk about doing it another way. This is so dishonest. I just can't believe they get away with this, and there's not anybody in the scientifically literate community raising a single eyebrow that, you really shouldn't be making an argument for our theory with lies and deception.
We'll see that the same types of limitations come up. If we make the wavelength longer and longer, hoping that that will disturb the electron less and less, we'll see that when we reach a wavelength long enough to recover the interference pattern on the back wall, now we can no longer tell which of the openings the electron went through. Sure, now we have our interference.
So there's just absolutely no evidence that low frequency light, when it does impact an electron, that somehow it has less energy. It just has to do with the fact with each piece of the energy that hits it, it's going to be the same amount of energy. And it's just about the time, how quickly you apply the energy. And the quicker you apply the energy means you get to a higher velocity quicker for the electron. So it's a little bit more efficient, but that's it. There's no actual more energy.
Pattern on the back wall again. But at these long wavelengths, the flash we see will be so diffuse and spread out that we can't...
So Einstein says you can't diffuse and spread out a flash of light. It's either a photon or it's not a photon. So again, you don't have weak photons and strong photons. So again, more bullshit.
Tell which gap the electron went through. It really does seem like this is something we are stuck with. If we find a way to measure which opening...
Find a way to make up more lies and deception so we can prove our theory with just fake experiments contrived in our imagination, and that's good science. I mean, it's just terrible.
The electron went through, the interference pattern is destroyed. But
says you, with no physical evidence.
As long as we don't check on exactly how the electron gets through the gaps in the first wall, there will be an interference pattern on the back wall.
So, no proof, but I just said so. Did you hear me say so with authority? I said so, so you should believe so.
These things really do act like particles and like waves at the same time.
So they really don't. It's really just absolute nonsense. I don't even understand how anybody could be stupid enough to think wave mechanics makes any sense at all, especially when you're too chicken to assert the existence of some kind of medium, or ether.
Throughout the mid and late 1920s, a great deal of effort was directed toward developing a rigorous system of mathematics that could be used to describe and calculate how quantum particle waves behave and interact.
Yeah, so they came up with complete bullshit.
In 1925,
Forky symbol, yes, that's the key thing. Look, it's in the equation twice. Forky symbol, which is completely what they call the wave function, which you can't know unless you know everything there is to know about the experiment. So it's completely useless formula because, frankly, the only way you get the answer is if you already have the answer.
For example, Erwin Schrödinger developed an equation that describes the wave-like behavior of electrons. The Schrödinger equation is still taught today to nearly all undergraduate physics students. And it makes accurate predictions, at least.
Okay, they say it does something. I've never seen anybody solve this moronic equation for any circumstance whatsoever, ever, and predict anything. So show me where somebody uses this stupid equation and actually predicts something.
For electrons that are moving at speeds far below the speed of light. And Schrödinger wasn't by any means the only scientist to make progress in this direction.
No, and let's understand, Schrödinger was completely opposed to their interpretation of quantum mechanics. So he's arguing Schrödinger's equation in a form that Schrödinger would say you can't use it for that. That's not what I wrote it for. So that's all part of this bullshit real history versus their lie history. So the whole invention of Schrödinger's cat was to mock the silliness of quantum mechanics. And then this is what they're pretending it's somehow on their side, when no, it's mocking it.
Many other physicists, including Paul Dirac and Werner Heisenberg and Max Born, each made important contributions around the same time.
Wacky, silly crap. So Dirac is famous for somehow matter is a wave, which is silly. Cannonball is a wave. It's not a wave. Okay, and Heisenberg with the silly, well, we can't see it, so I can just make up some kind of law because we can't see to check that somehow matter doesn't have position and location and velocities. All of this is somehow amorphous and nothing's actually in any position. And Born is, can't remember.
This new generation of quantum theorists was not content with the old quantum theory as developed by Einstein, Bohr, and de Broglie.
Oh, so Einstein, Bohr, and de Broglie. So no, it isn't any of Einstein. So it's all Bohr and de Broglie. So big lie there too.
They were intent on building a more complete and more mathematically robust system. This system would become known as quantum mechanics. As this system of quantum mechanics was being developed, Einstein found himself more and more troubled by its implications. At least with the concept of light quanta, there was some notion of what it meant for light to be a wave. It had been long established that light consists of oscillating or vibrating electric and magnetic fields. And the peaks of a light wave are those points in space where the electric and magnetic fields are the strongest.
So more nonsense about, dissecting the entire universe into things in positions, and Einstein wouldn't have had any problem with that as long as you say, yes, there's things in positions and they're heading in a direction, and you can just update the movie frame by frame and everything will be cause and effect consistent. And that's Einstein's argument to this nonsense, that somehow we can't see a single frame, because everything is randomized and who knows whoized, and every single moment we're creating new universes.
But when it came to something like an electron wave, it wasn't at all clear what the peaks of the wave really represented. The key question about matter waves, and the question that was bothering Einstein, was the following: what exactly is waving?
So I don't think that bothered Einstein as much as the very fact that you're saying it's waving. He's saying it's coming in chunks, and it doesn't. You can't have a weak wave and a strong wave. You can only have a photon. Bang. You have a bang, a clump. Period. One clump, one size, all the time.
Classical wave makes sense because it's made up of many objects. A water wave, for example, is the highest at one point because there are the most water molecules at that point. But the wave of a single electron can't be interpreted in terms of the collective behavior of many objects.
Yeah, and it's only rational to understand that it's a mass moving a velocity. It has a momentum, and that's it. There's nothing else it possesses.
It's only one electron, after all. One object can't exhibit the kind of collective behavior that a water wave does. In 1926, Max Born proposed a very radical answer to this essential question. Born argued that the shape of the wave of an electron or of any other quantum object, called the wave function, should be interpreted to represent the probability of that object being found in a given location, when or if it were measured. If you conduct an experiment to determine the location of a given electron, there's a high probability that you'll find it somewhere where the absolute value of the wave function is very high. There's a
Yeah, so again, this breaking it down into probability is fine, but to say that the probability is randomized isn't fine. That's the nonsense part. We know that if I roll dice, it's real things the dice hit, it's real angles they bounce at, it's real geometry, and there's no woo in it. There's no, all of a sudden there was a random event. There's no random events in the universe.
much lower probability that you'll find it in a place where the absolute value of the wave function is low. As Born saw the problem, there's no choice but to view the wave of an electron in terms of the probability of it being found in a particular location.
So again, this doesn't show anything about any findings or anything. They just keep showing this stupid sine wave as this explains something, that somehow an electron is a sine wave. It is not a sine wave. It doesn't behave as a sine wave. It doesn't have alternating amplitudes. It doesn't have any of this crap.
Or in a particular configuration. And this soon became the standard way for physicists to think about matter waves in quantum mechanics.
Matter waves. Again, just, oh God, it's just disgusting. Matter wave. Ugh.
Let's take a second to step back and ask what this really means. According to Born and his way of thinking about quantum mechanics,
so according to just made up theoretical crap based on no fucking physical evidence, let's just invent the Holy Ghost. The matter wave.
how should we think about the electron as it exists prior to being measured? Well, in some sense, according to Born, the electron is extended across the volume of space that is covered by the wave function.
So yeah, it's everywhere. It's too ridiculous. So the single electron goes everywhere. It's heading for Saturn. It's heading for Neptune. It's heading all over the universe. And some miraculous way, all of that disappears when it finally lands in one place. Oh, it's just so fucking disgusting. Nonsense.
When we measure the location of an electron, it's always point-like, without any spatial extent.
Whatever that means, without any spatial extent. What do you mean? Oh, without twins or other electrons going in all kinds of other places? Yeah, it goes in one place. It's one thing, it ends up in one place.
Before it is measured, an electron is simultaneously in all the locations it's covered by its wave function.
So again, which could be all the locations of how long it takes to get from point A to point B. So, I mean, it could be a bazillion different locations that it's all in. Yeah, no, it's not in any of them. It's in one of them.
It's in many places and all at the same time.
It's just, it's like the dice or have all the numbers are all turning at the same time. It's just like the roulette wheel is somehow every number, the ball is on top of every number, and all of a sudden it just appears on one number. I mean, it's just such crap.
In this sense, electrons and other quantum objects have a kind of probabilistic existence, being in all possible places and doing all possible things.
Oh, shit. They get away with this shit. Oh. How do you fall for this crap? I throw a baseball through a slit, and your idea is that somehow the baseball loses all relevance to reality. It's got its little ghost baseballs are going in all directions, and wherever it happens to hit, then all the ghosts disappear. It's just too silly.
At all possible times. This is sometimes described in terms of what is known as the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. According to this principle, the more precisely defined the location of a quantum object is, The less specified is its velocity.
So it just happens to be they write a principle for something that's impossible to see, and therefore they can make up anything they want to. And that's all this is. The theory of, well, you can't prove it wrong. That's all it is. That's their theoretical ground. Well, you can't prove it wrong.
And vice versa. According to quantum mechanics, an object cannot be in only one place and moving at only one speed. At this point in time, you're probably feeling a bit confused.
No, you should be feeling revulsion and disgust that this is what the world has come to. Intelligent people talk this kind of baby drool.
And you should be. This is bizarre and incredibly counterintuitive stuff.
It's religious nonsense.
Quantum mechanics describes a kind of existence that is beyond strange. And is fundamentally different from anything that we as human beings normally experience.
Right, so it has nothing to do with the actual universe we actually can touch and feel and do experiments on. It's the magiverse in the little tiny things that we can't see. So go someplace where we can't see anything and then just make up all these phantoms. Because you can get away with it. Because I can't turn the lights on and show that you're full of shit.
Yes. As Niels Bohr once famously remarked, anyone who is not shocked by quantum theory has not understood it. In December,
and again, Bohr was, I was going to argue, he really had a horniness for keeping the universe mysterious, as if it's sacred, it's God's knowledge, and we're not allowed to know what God knows. It reeked of it.
In November of 1926, Einstein wrote a letter to Max Born expressing his skepticism of the new interpretation of quantum theory. In this letter, Einstein made one of the most famous and often quoted remarks. Let me read you just a few sentences from this letter. Quantum mechanics is very impressive, but an inner voice tells me that it's not yet the real thing. The theory says a lot, but does not bring us any closer to the secret of the old one.
So that's pretty scary right there, the secret of the old one. Oh, shit.
I, at any rate, am convinced that he does not play dice. Einstein expressed sentiments similar to this one on many occasions throughout his life. In various ways, Einstein became fond of insisting that God does not play dice with the universe. In the late 1920s,
I wish it was just a poorly chosen metaphor, I suppose. But it just seems like way too many of these people had way too much appreciation for some sort of, as religion as anything other than the dumbest brain fart humans committed against logic and intelligence, this fabiology.
a consensus was starting to form around a refined version of Max Born's interpretation. This view became known as the Copenhagen interpretation, named for the city where Niels Bohr, Werner Heisenberg, and others had made major contributions to its development.
And it's just complete nonsense, because you can just look at a double slit experiment and you can see when the slits are open, when you open a single slit in light, you can see that more and more light, the bigger you open it, the more light goes straight through. Every photon isn't randomized. Every photon isn't going everywhere. No, 97% of the photons are going to go dead straight right through the damn slit.
According to the Copenhagen view of quantum mechanics, quantum particles behave like waves. These particle waves are each described by their wave function. The shape of a given particle's wave function represents the probability that it will be found at different locations or with different velocities.
So I don't know, this is really stretching that this is just about particle waves. No. Copenhagen? No.
Generally speaking, quantum particles exist in multiple locations at once and have multiple velocities all simultaneously.
All right, so just silly. Multiple velocities? What the hell is that? How can you even make that make any sense? Different momentums going different directions? Even that is just crazy. It's bad enough you got them going in different directions. Have them going in different velocities. I mean, what the hell is that shit?
But according to the Copenhagen interpretation,
light always has the same speed, so those quantum particles can't possibly be going different velocities. So why would he say something like that?
Observation of a particle is made, its wave function collapses.
So more bullshit, no experimental evidence, just a nonsense statement.
The measured quantity takes on a single measured value. At the 1927 Solvay conference, it became clear that a consensus view was starting to form around the Copenhagen interpretation. Most of those in attendance seem to have accepted the probabilistic nature.
Yeah, because they have no evidence, they have no experiment, they have no nothing to base any of these judgments on but the lies you tell each other. So if they start telling each other lies about detector experiments and how they turned out, well, then maybe they could be fooled if they believed that these fake experiments ever took place.
Of their new theory.
I mean, Leibniz got away with just telling everybody that, well, 4 pounds dropped 1 foot is the same as 1 pound dropped 4 feet. And everybody just said, oh, yeah, well, that makes sense. 4 feet, 1, 4, 1, 4, 1. Yeah, that makes sense. Because they weren't smart enough to know that, no, 4 feet in gravity is only going to be twice the time. It's not going to be 4 times the time.
Furthermore, there was a general acceptance that this was likely to be a real aspect of nature and not something that would be explained away when they better understood the problem.
Oh, brother. So they were confident in their confidence of their confidence.
For example, Max Born, Werner Heisenberg, and Niels Bohr were each fully aware that the universe as described by quantum mechanics was fundamentally probabilistic. And while
whatever that means, again, this is all just to try to say there is no determinism because we have free will, because we're creations of God. It's just a religion.
they acknowledged that there was still some chance that determinism could somehow be restored in some future revision of the theory, they each thought that this was...
So again, they don't think there's such a thing as cause and effect. And you people actually can breathe this crap. You can smell that and not revolt.
Pretty unlikely. Unlike Einstein, they were prepared to accept the lack of determinism in the subatomic world. Einstein was unwilling to accept any version of quantum mechanics
any version of physics that wasn't physical,
in which God played dice with the universe. And when Einstein declared this,
spontaneous randomness is idiotic. You have to force randomizing something. You can never have random. There's no random well you can go to. So again, this is all just such a pile of crap. We have to do an awful lot of work to create synthetic random, and it's always synthetic because there is no source of real random.
Niels Bohr simply replied by telling Einstein to stop telling God what to do.
That's the end.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you'd like to learn more about the topics...
hear some more of our silly crap about reality. We're all a bunch of wooey little pussies who, we have to have all... We all gotta support each other. Love, love, and happy, happy, wave, wave. Pathetic.
in this episode, the full list of series that these clips...
so we can talk about some UFOs and other things that you people like to talk about. We'll talk about all that kind of stuff, nipple rings and all kinds of dopey crap that we think's going to solve a problem, but really doesn't solve any problem. Yeah, we're all about that.
came from is in the description below. You can watch them.
Get what you deserve, you scum. Lying scum. Propagandizing scummy shit. God, I hate this plant of lying scum. Yeah. I had that on, right? There's a possibility you didn't see any of that, isn't there? Let's see. I'll make sure. Just for curiosity. Oh, no, you saw it. All right, so till the next time and such. Enough of that crap. That was just so hideously horrible. So they have a whole channel full of crappy videos. So I might play a couple more of their photon ones. This gravity one needs to be done too. But we'll see. It's so bad. What qualifies as science? It's just terrible. Awful. So disappointing.